Welcome to the discussion session. I have terrible arthritis in my back tonight, so when I turn whole body and stuff, that's why. Sorry, but part of old age and a wild young life, that's what did it. Okay, so calling the meeting to order. We're in order, okay. You're gonna start by reviewing the agenda for the regular commission meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight's agenda, we have the introduction of an ordinance making technical amendments to the garbage fee ordinance. We have consideration of the bylaws for our new advisory boards. We discussed those in discussion sessions last time. We have the consideration of the award of a south garage maintenance contract. Consideration to purchase ballistic vests for the police department. Our current vests, they carry a 5-year warranty. I believe that warranty is up at the end of June. We have the consideration to purchase 2 police vehicles and also the consideration of the commencement of pension benefits for a recently retired employee.
Great. Now, my favorite subject. The main park site plan and rec center architectural study. Come on down.
I think there's more of that.
You can sit next to me, it's okay.
Thank you, commissioners, for hearing us again. We have folks from Draw Collective and Kashik MTR, our consultants on the project. So I will let them kind of talk through what they have to present to the group tonight. The big takeaway I think that we want as staff out of this presentation is some direction from the commission on what happens with the existing building. So you'll hear things about the existing building. You'll hear things about a potential additional building. You'll hear things about what can be done around the buildings in the park. And really the decision point for the commission tonight, because there's a grant opportunity out there for us to apply for that's due in April. So we want some direction on what to do with the existing building. So with that, I will pass it off to Chris Brown from Draw Collective. We just use the arrow keys to work your way forward.
All right, thank you. So before we get into it, I think Ashik has been here a couple times for this plan. This is the first time Draw's been here. We've met some of you, but not all of you as part of this process. So I'm Chris Brown and this is Amy. We both work with Draw Collective when we're just located. We walk down here to the meeting. We're down at 470 Washington Road. We've been there for 70 some years, 75 years, long time. So we're really happy to be working on a project.
Not showing your age at all.
Some people in this room will remember Valentin English.
Valentin English, yeah.
Right, Father Hal.
Yeah.
And many of us always admire that Mr. Valentor has his grave overlooking Draw Collective.
Looking right at it.
I know. I know, right? Like, that's almost funny. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
So I think Ian kind of gave the overview. We want to go over kind of just the existing rec center building. We started off by going through that and kind of not doing a full assessment, but just trying to understand what the needs were and what the challenges are at that building. We have a couple options for renovating the building. We have an option for a new rec center in the park, which is one potential place to put that. And then Patrick will have some additional information about what we can do on the site around that as we try and tie whatever we do with these buildings into the larger park.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so I'm sure we've all been to the existing rec center. You know, when we pull up there, the building is very dark. It's hard to tell if, you know, if the building is open. There is a lot of wayfinding confusion. But one of the largest problems with the rec center is that it's not accessible. So the pool is a challenge for folks to get to in the community. As well as there are 2 entrances to this building. So there is a hockey entrance on the lower level, and then there is a separate entrance up the ramp to get to the second community level. But the building itself lacks any wayfinding. If you are a a newbie coming to the rec center, to know really what level you should go to or where to pick your, you know, drop your child off at summer, those sort of things. So the first thing we did was we met with the staff and we really examined how the rec center currently functions and improvements that they would like to see in the facility. One of their biggest takeaways was that the building lacks storage. they could use additional locker and changing facilities for the hockey program. And that there is a constraint, a need for additional meeting rooms of different sizes. As well as the accessible route, internal route to the building. So there is an interior stair on the building, but it is not to be used by the public and there is no elevator to the building. We'll go through a few different options for you. One thing that we wanted to note right off the bat is that the hockey area, the ice rink, we have made at this time no changes to it. So the white side of the building is exactly as it is. It's really just the left side of the building where the staff are and where the community programs are held that we have looked at.
Thank you for that clarification, because I was looking at your
Yeah.
rendering and it looked like the studio rink was
We
enlarged.
drew it slightly different on one of them and you caught it.
Yeah.
It's not intentional and that's not what we're trying to do.
Okay.
We are not proposing that at all.
One thing I want to point out, I've been in the building, I don't know how many times, and I didn't know until we started going around that if you look at the back on the left, there's a stair back there that goes up along the back side of the building and out. It's basically your emergency way out from that back, because you're by code too far away from that front door. And if we want to look at creating a path up to the pool, that stair is in the way of that. So it's something we'd have to deal with. You still need a way out of there, but the way that stair is located causes problems that I honestly didn't even know existed until we were poking around in the back of the building and looking at how it all worked back in there. And honestly, it wasn't on the original plans of the building. It must have been something they found out under construction and realized they needed something
LDI.
back there. So anyway,
There.
it is there and it's something we need to work around.
Okay.
So the first option that we'll show you two options. One is a smaller addition of an elevator and a stairwell to the exterior of the building. And then the second option is a larger addition to the front of the building. So on this first plan here, you'll see the addition of the elevator and the communicating stairwell. And we've also reconfigured some things internally to meet some of those staff wishes. So you can see the areas in red, those are staff areas, and we've consolidated those areas on the first and second floor around that existing stairwell, so that staff are able to move vertically throughout the building internally. The other idea with this is you can create more of a storefront for staff access. So as people buy membership passes or hockey facility, you can really have just one point of check-in for folks. We've moved the party room to the right so that participants can come in and off the ice very easily, and parents can watch their children, as they are participating in parties. We've also added an additional changing locker room facility in the back. So with these additions, we're just getting the addition of more toilets and showers. And these could be, used however you can have them as swing restrooms, depending on the team makeup that day or who is using those. But those are just additional changing facilities for refs, or if it is a boy and girl team, that sort of thing. If you go up to the second floor, here you can see where the elevator drops you off. And the biggest change here is that we've moved all the meeting rooms over to the left side. This has helped streamline some of the spaces. We've picked up some additional storage, some kitchenettes for the spaces, and made more comfortable meeting rooms that can still be divided. But most importantly, when you look at the area on the right, we've created a direct hallway to the pool. So if in the summer, if residents need to have access to the pool, whether they're in a wheelchair or carrying or have a stroller and a bunch of bags, they could park, take the elevator up and go right through the building and be right outside on the level of the pool. So it's a more accessible entrance there as well. And you can see the area in the red again, that's that staff area that connects through that stairwell.
And it's
I have-
daylight,
Yeah, yes, and we would have day lighting in that space.
staff offices.
The other opportunity that you have is because now we've cleaned up that wall that is running parallel to the ice rink. You
Yeah.
could have windows in there and have additional viewing into the ice rink from that second level, if you wish.
At some point in the proposal, maybe when you get to the last page of cost of A, B, and C, the cost of just adding the elevator.
We have that.
Okay, so whatever.
If you want to know, we'll
Time
talk
is.
about it at that point. That would, so the thing I mentioned on the stair, you can see this has a reconfigured stair, which allows you to get by on the right and creates that path straight out. So that's something if we just plug that elevator on, you'd still be going back and then out to the left where the current exit is. You know, we didn't reconfigure other stuff on the floor, but it's still possible. You still get the benefit of an elevator and that new accessibility to the upper floor. We do just that move.
So the second option is in addition to the front of the building. So in this area, we are coming out off of the front, but we are still behind where that smaller rink is. So we're not this addition does not stand proud of that. And we have some renderings later on that we can show you. The configuration of the back of this area is very similar to option A with the addition of the restroom, or the hockey changing things rooms and the party room on the right. The biggest difference here is that we've moved all of the staff areas onto the first floor. So all of the staff will be on the first floor. And the reason why we did that is because it creates an opportunity for a higher ceiling height on the second floor. So if you go into the second floor here, you can see those two areas in blue. With a higher ceiling height from an addition, this is where you could have, depending on what you wanted the use for, but you could have areas or rooms that have ellipticals, cycling bikes, areas where you need a higher ceiling height for participants to actively engage in those. So we have the areas broken out with the meeting rooms. You can see the size of the meeting rooms has changed somewhat, but you can also see those two areas in the blue that you could have as more flex programming spaces for your wellness areas that need a higher ceiling height. But other than that, you can still see we maintain the direct path to the pool, and the area in the that the stair would be open so that you would have more of a grand feel when you walk in on the first floor. You can see up that communicating stairwell. You have the opportunity for a big light fixture so that when residents pull up, they can see that the building is on. We have lots of opportunity for glazing, so folks can see people, community members exercising or however you would want to program those spaces. You have a lot of opportunities there.
And this option also gives us potentially a large community space where you could have larger events, birthday parties, other
On the
community,
Lower level, yeah, where you first come in, you have a pretty large open space. You could furnish it in a way that allowed you to pull people together, have an interior movie screen to project something, or do all sorts of events like that, just because you have the square footage.
Yeah, when I was even thinking on the second floor, one of the things we've heard through the Parks Master Plan, the comp plan, was that there's a lack of sort of community gathering space that's like rentable for people. If you want to have a party of 75 people, we don't really have a space that can be rented right now that's indoors.
Right.
That has a serviceable kitchenette like this would.
Staff offices still daylit on the first floor?
Yes, so you would still have windows in the front and we can get some on the side of that building and,
Okay.
you
You
know,
take down the mounts.
yes.
Yeah, and as you get farther around the side, you can't quite get as many, but we would
Sure,
put more
you
like
get
kind of
some.
storage, back of
Yeah,
house stuff in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
area.
that's fine. Just, I hate.
Yeah, it'd be better than what they are
Without
now
windows.
by
Yeah, I
far.
hate that.
And there's a lot of opportunity here from when you see the glazing on the front for the daylight to carry in through the building. So, you know, the rest of the areas
Yeah.
can have more captured daylight throughout the facility. It'll be a brighter, lighter space.
Is glazing a term? Oh, sorry.
Windows.
Windows, sorry.
Windows.
Sorry, windows.
Embers, windows.
Couch and sofa. Okay, so here you can start to see the space configuration to see in each option what you're picking up, based on how we've laid it out. if you decided to move forward on a certain option, we would definitely want to revisit these options. And as we get more into the construction documents,
Sure.
we'll be able to find additional areas for storage and electrical rooms and those sorts of things fall into place in that process, and these numbers will shift a lot. A lot of times, you know, the storage, we tighten up the floor plan a little bit and we are able to get more user space at that time.
Yeah, these are very conceptual, but you can see that as we go from the existing A to B, everything gets a little bit bigger, and then B has the big addition of the flex rooms. It's a significant change from where you are now.
So kind of the grand total space goes up to your point of it.
Yeah.
Things might change.
Space and I think traffic flow too, because when we talked with David and the rec staff about kind of how the current traffic flow works, so the check-in ticketing booth on the one side, then you have to go over to the other side to get, do skate rentals and all the other stuff.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
consolidate that in a
Yeah.
more streamlined way.
Yeah.
So this is a view of the building as it is right now. I think we had this way back when we first started talking about this. You can see kind of how set back it is, and how dark it is. And then this is just a rendering of a concept of what that could look like. This is a version that would expand it out and pull it forward. Looking at a sort of a large amount of glass on that right side, that would be that kind of public atrium with the stair going up to the upper floor. And then on those two left and right, so the center and the left windows, those would be those flex rooms where you could see activity in there, see people doing whatever kind of events or exercise spaces you had going on in there. And then we'll see some options later that Patrick is looking at the site, but we do more out front of that building to activate that space, create better places to sit and wait for your ride or to hang out outside and places to be there. And you can see along that corner as you're coming around like this, we'd be working across that whole area to bring down the mound, and it would bring it down to more of a level area, and you can gain that space up against the building
And windows.
and windows, lots of glazing. Lots of glazing.
Administration.
Yeah.
What, I'm trying to figure out where the elevator is, just trying to look at the front.
So in this version, the elevator is farther back. In the version where we just do the elevator, that will be much more upfront because you're not adding building around it. So
Okay,
the elevator is really in the same spot on both these schemes. It's just we've built
go
buildings.
out towards the parking
Yeah.
lot, okay.
Yeah, we were looking at, like, in this option B, if you had that elevator tower there, you could have an opportunity where you put a large screen on there and you could project you could have the hockey games playing, you could have rec center movie nights in that lobby, like, you could truly create a community space in that glassed in tower that we were just looking at, with all that seating there.
That's the elevator right there.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the two options that we're focusing on tonight. We were also asked to, I guess, dream big, look at a bigger option, go big, whatever you want to say. So we looked at an option of, there are many places in all of Mount Lebanon where we could have a larger kind of rec center space. And, we're looking at the park here. So what if we put it in the park? So this is an option that looks at it in the park. Our initial thought and initial direction was to have it add on to the building in some way. And we look at a lot of ways to do that. And it doesn't work to have this larger building connected to the existing building. Part of it, if you look at kind of the perimeter, like almost 2/3 or half is you're right up against the rink. So there's really no way to connect into the existing building because you have to come across that. Get around on the other side, there's service areas, there's the other rink. And then there's not really a good way to connect onto the existing community room side without closing in the few windows it could potentially have on that side. So we ultimately land on this version, at least in the park, that separates it out. And knowing we have an issue with parking and the available parking on the site, we're looking at a version here that would take the lowest level and create basically a parking area garage on that floor. So it's not a multi-floor garage. You just drive in the same height as the parking lot. And that would be the parking there on the floor. It gains you about 30 spaces, 32 spaces, I think, in there. And then the building would stack above that. I mean, there's a pretty sizable hill going up behind. But so this is a little closer plan. You'd go in, there'd be an entrance on the rec center or current rec center side of that coming in on the right there, smaller lobby, and then you'd go up in an elevator or stairs to get to the main floors of the rec center. So this would be the parking. You come in and park, go into that lobby, or just walk into that lobby from the current space out there. And as you go up, one of the big spaces that we wanted, that was desired in this was, basically essentially a basketball court, but a large space where you could play those kind of things, pickleball. This would be a large basketball court that you could play cross court, so you can have additional games going on at the same time. You can have some of those rec league games. And then, so in blue are kind of all those recreation spaces. Then around it, across the front, you can have some of your elliptical kind of things, cardio equipment. You can have other strength equipment. This is a space probably more than anything where there'd be a lot of more layers of programming exactly what goes in there, but this is enough space to give you that kind of community-wide recreation facility. And then on the right, we have a whole new set of locker rooms. You can see the red. This would still have like a lot of the, staff over in the existing building, but you would still need to staff this. And so that's another thing to consider, is that we bring some of those over here to manage the operation of this building. And then we looked at leaving that track open, I'm sorry, the court open above. We'd have a track for walking or jogging up above that, and another level of open rec area on that floor. And then the whole mix of, kind of whatever we wanted to have there. Ellipticals, treadmills, open space for anything you wanted. And so this is that view. So that option going there could work with any of the options, either A or B, or some minor version on the existing rec building, because it's a separate building. It'd be kind of a combination of how you wanted to put those two together. So this is, again, that building. You can see a little bit of it off to the side. This is looking up towards it, so you can see where the kind of pedestrian entrance is going in there, straight kind of in the middle. Off to the left is the vehicular entrance, and then the building itself is up above with a lot of glass looking out onto the park. And this is a view kind of looking straight on, see that building. So it's obviously a large building, make a big impact on the park, but it would put it in a place that is centrally located in the community.
And we have the exterior plaza out in front of the building that really ties the grade in. To the left, the parking lot rises, and so you would be at grade and you can walk across the plaza over to the swimming pool without having to come down in front of the recreation center and then up what is currently the driveway now in between the buildings.
Yeah, that's a great point. I should have mentioned that, is that if you look on the left, kind of where the current playground is now, about that level, you could walk across the front of the building, and that's the same level as where the pool is. So you can kind of walk across, not going into the building, but around the front of the building. That would be part of being on top of the garage. And then here's where you're getting wrong. These are the costs for those options. So this is kind of a very preliminary look at those costs. We, obviously very preliminary plans. These, we tried to give them to you as total project cost. So this is construction plus kind of all the fees and equipment and things like that you would need to put in the building. So, this should in theory be your total cost. And then we gave you, a range to try and cover it. So option A is in the 6.5 to 7 million. And B is, in that $10 million range. And then C is the big separate building. So that's, a lot, 22.5 to almost 25. And then the bottom, you could do the A plus C or B plus C. And then what you had asked about is, all right, what if we just want to do the elevator and just plug that on the front? That, looking at it the same way, the range would be like 1.7 to 1.9. So say 1.8 would be kind of that. You have to redo some of the front to make that work, because you're kind of screwing up where all the doors are and stuff, but just as light a touch as you could, getting that elevator and stairway into the top and leaving that top floor in its current arrangement.
Okay, so 1.7 to 1.9.
So before we move on to the Patrick stuff, for the ideas for the park space around the rec center. Since we have a grant opportunity available to us, the applications are due in April, does the commission have a strong preference towards what happens with the existing building?
I do, of course.
Apply for money for the elevator. I'm just looking at these costs, and my eyes are just like,
I would go with B. I don't think, I think, you can slam something on the front of a building, but you have an opportunity right here to really improve a building that was built in the 70s, late 60s, late 70s. It is, woefully out of date. You have staff sitting in offices that doesn't have daylight. I think that's just cruel and unusual punishment. I just think you have an opportunity to really improve it. And I don't think that $10 million is all that much for this, quite frankly.
I like option B better than option A, but I really like some of the things that are included in option C. And I'm just curious, I'm not an architect, so I have no idea whether this is even doable, but I was curious of the cost to add those features into the existing building, even if it's going up levels. If that's even possible.
You can't go up levels. We had an engineering study done where you'd have to, Mr. Dieseroth, didn't you do the engineering study of going up on the rec center? You'd have to build a whole new building around it to go up, am I right?
Foundations wouldn't support currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think this, one thing that showed me when they did this work was we probably need a new building somewhere to add recreation space. Is it there or is it someplace else?
Yeah,
You know.
I like those features. I mean,
Yeah,
the basketball court or the multi-sport court.
Yeah.
The workout rooms, I mean, you know, when we did feasibility study a while ago, I know we cited like Upper St. Clair's and we've had conversations about, you know, that site loses money or whatever, but I think when I talk to residents, those are the things that I hear about. Gym memberships, basketball courts, sport courts. I was just, my niece played soccer and futsal in a really small building in the city. It was like, I think it was West Penn, maybe, I don't know, something like that. It was like it's like a tiny little gym. So we just don't have any of that stuff around here.
I also really like with the new building, the tie-in that levels the grade all the way across.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I mean, again, if we talk about disability and ADA, having a fairly level path forward is just, you know, my kid can make it up here the way the grade is now, but my kid plays hockey and is 28. You know, if I were in a wheelchair, I would never make that. So, you know.
What's the square footage added with option C? Because when I first looked at this, when you first sent it over, you know, like option B was obvious to me because it's really the one option where we're adding a decent amount of square footage for
Right.
the price.
Right.
And then, you know, with option C, which just adds all those features which people that I talk to really want, so it's like, if we're gonna spend $6 or $10 million to get, you know, a refreshed. And a lot of the things you mentioned about moving internally makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I was just there with David for a meeting, like I would imagine a lot of these are like no-brainers anyway now, right? Some of that internal movement of some of those buildings, which makes sense to me. But I'd love to see some of those other features. I know it's tough to work in.
So the option C building is a separate thing, is about 50,000 square feet.
50,000.
So that's more than
Yeah.
double, like,
Yeah.
if you look at that community, like, the stuff we're doing on that left side, even in B, grows it to like 25. So
Right.
this is double again, where you'd be on that. I mean, that's why it
Yeah.
costs so much, it's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah,
square footage.
that's a huge, yeah.
So the question for me is like,
Building.
I look at A and B and you're like, that makes sense for that amount,
Mhm.
you know? And then I look at option C and then you start getting in a conversation of like, it's a lot of money, but is that a benefit to the community? And then having conversations like, well, what would, you know, would we need to charge fees for that stuff? Is that wrapped into current fees? How does that work? You know, do we kind of eat those costs and wrap it into overall rec for the municipality? You know,
I think you'd almost have to set it up the same way that St. Clair is. You could have a resident fee and non-resident fee. But
right, yeah, yeah. But I love the idea and I think it's tough. I know you've got it shown here, but like if we go with option A or option B, putting permanent gym equipment in those meeting rooms, I think is unrealistic because it would have to be moved, you know, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, I
It
never
looks
think,
great there. I just
and
don't think it's
everything
realistic.
space is as flexible as people want it. Like, oh, it's flexible, and I'm like, yeah, but somebody has to move it,
You
somebody
need a lot of
has
storage to make.
Even
it
with the
work.
extra storage.
to. It's flexible, you
I
know?
just don't know that it's realistic.
Yeah.
I would love to see it there,
Yeah.
but
I was thinking, you know, again, we've got the expense of this, the expense of the garage. And just back to the dollars and cents of this going. I'm not saying it doesn't look pretty, I'm just saying the dollars and cents of this, we talked about. If replacing the south garage and saying, where are we going to put a building like this as part of that project? If we do this big park, then what do we do with the garage? I mean, that's,
yeah.
you know, so it's the numbers that.
We could potentially have $100 million worth of projects that we could potentially do in the next 5 or 7 years. And we really need to get to the point where we start prioritizing them and deciding which ones are real and which ones aren't.
And I think this shows us we need an additional building for recreation, no matter where we put it.
To do what
Put it in
everyone
the
tells
south
us. they-
garage, if we put it on the main park site, or if there's some other site that's central that we could use.
Right.
But yes, I mean, I just think this kind of proves it, and thank you very much for going outside the box for you.
Okay, so in-
Come on in.
So in the immediacy, I know we have a couple commissioners online too. I'm hearing the majority in the room leans towards option B for the existing building. Do either of the commissioners online have a strong feeling towards what we do with the existing building? So that I know when I go apply for this grant, what I'm applying for.
Andrew, you want to go ahead?
Sure, if we're just talking about the existing building, then I think B is the more logical recommendation. Commissioner Silverman, I do appreciate your concern about the dollars and cents. Yeah, just to kind of give you guys the ballpark number, if we were to go with B and C, that 35 million for a 30-year debt service is about $2.25 million a year. Just to kind of give you a sense of scale. So it's not small. And we would definitely need to be thinking about what types of strategies we would be, thinking about in terms of funding this type of facility. So there's definitely a lot of challenges here, but I think, as you all know, I'm a firm believer that if we are going to do something, we need to do it right. This building is going to be here for a lot longer than 30 years. It's going to be an asset of the community, probably for more like 100. And that does deserve a significant investment. So if we're going to do it, we need to do it. And so if I'm going to pick between A and B, I'm going with B.
I concur. I think, for the price difference between A and B, B is such a significant upgrade that it seems to be pretty worthwhile. So to me, B is certainly the better option. And then when it comes to C, yeah, I think it's a much longer conversation about where is the best site for that. So as it stands, I'm in favor of B.
Great,
Thank you for the feedback. We will
Sure.
apply for grant funding accordingly.
okay, now
We'll
site
hand it
plan,
off to Patrick.
yeah.
Great, thank you. John Burkle from Passion NPR, and this is Alex Swaggett. We are going to go through 3 different concepts that we came up with for the exterior around the existing recreation center. And we are showing it with option C included. This will work with option A, B, or C, but we thought we need to be thinking about option C should that be proposed. So with that, Alex is going to walk you through the 3 different plans, the 3 different options.
Hi, everyone. So the 3 different options are essentially kind of like just different ways to think about how this plaza space is oriented and the parking is oriented, how you approach the building, all of which to prepare for the new proposed structures that DRAW has made. Anything can be mixed in with anything. So if you like the parking of a certain plan, but a plaza with another plan, like they can be mixed and matched. And like John said, all of them have option C of the building in mind with the addition of the rec center that can be removed and it will still be able to work if it's tweaked slightly. So the first option for this one, I should note that all of the options have the addition of a drop-off area, significant plaza space, bike racks, solar panels on the building, and some traffic calming methods with the curbs. The differences for option 1. Now I can point. The difference is all these options have the mounds removed. In this one, with the mounds removed, we added space to add additional parking, if that's something that's desired. So there's I think that says 40 spaces, 40 spaces, and I think there's 20 some spaces right now. Thank you, that helps. 20 some spaces right now, so that adds parking this way. All the parking on the right side stays essentially the same, minus a couple spots that are lost for the addition of the entrance to the parking garage. But if the parking garage is not there, those spaces are gained back.
The plaza space is the more simple of the design in option one. It's the one that was shown in the renderings. It has a big open shelter with some lighting, some seating, some different planters all throughout the plaza with some benches. And that similar design is added to kind of like a deck space on the upper part of the rec center. Possibly also could have addition of some more high-tech furniture, having maybe some solar panel tables that might draw in some of the high school students over to hang out in this area. So that is option one. Option two is for the parking, it essentially stays the same. There's a smaller drop-off section here. But we remove some of the parking spaces along this side here and add more green space to have a larger buffer between the play area and the plaza and kind of have more green space between the rec center to have this flow be a little bit nicer between the play center. This one also, when it removes the mounds as opposed to, it replaces it with terrace seating. Which we have some examples of that down in this corner here. Of what it could be like, it would be planters and seating next throughout with ideally planters on the uppermost level to prevent people from climbing on the roof, but that would help with the recladding of the building. That wouldn't be needed. We would replace it with this kind of system instead. And the orthogonal geometry of the planters and seating would move into the front of the plaza and create this entrance here. In this one, we also decided to change this pedestrian access up here to a vehicular entrance and add some parking near the pool. There are pros and cons to having this. The pros obviously being there's inaccessible spaces up here that people can use, and also that prevents people that have wet bodies walking through the ice rink rec center. Some of the cons is that it divides the space. And there might be a problem with pedestrian safety with crossing over this area. So we did add a few raised crosswalks, but there's still always the concern. There's also a possible problem with people blocking the area up here. They're gonna drive up here, drop things off, stay up here forever and create a line, or so the staff might have to be in charge of blocking this area off if needed, or just different ways to be able to control the flow that's coming up here that may or may not be problematic.
And if I'm looking at those spaces correctly up by the pool, those are all ADA spaces.
ADA spaces, yes.
We're showing 4 spaces, and the concern is if you have 1,000 people at the pool, the first, people are gonna be camping out in the morning to get those 4 spaces.
Sure.
And then once those spaces are taken, you're gonna need to do something down in front of the recreation center to block off access. Otherwise, it's gonna be a traffic jam coming up the driveway to scout to see if there's a space for some people to park. So yeah, there are pros and cons that we need to weigh on that.
And the terrace design would be a similar to the plaza design with some seating and planters and things like that, more orthogonal way. So that is essentially option 2. Option 3 is the most drastic change. It's the big overhaul to see what we could do to really improve this area. One of the primary things being relocating the entrance along Stadium Drive. It is currently about right here. So it's shifting it down and creating more of a central alley with a roundabout and making this like the way that you look in and see the building. It makes it a more prominent entrance.
Sure.
It also would decrease some of the space over here, and you can add more parking where that drive came from. And in this space, we would remove the mounts and add more spaces this way. And this one, we also have the opportunity to move the playground since this is a flat location and we've heard from the community that they want the playground to be close to all of the amenities, to the bathrooms, to the shelter, to the rec space, like it makes sense to move it down and be a part of this flat space that was created in the parking. And it also helps create this upper lower connection if this building were to be built with the connection between the terrace and the playground. And in this one, the designs of the plaza and the terrace from the pictures have a more curvilinear style to it. Again, these can all be intermixed and changed depending on what is desired and liked, and you can add the tables or things of that nature. I should also, we did think a little bit about the paving for what the plaza could be. I forgot to mention this on option 1, but we could put like a map of Mount Lebanon on the paving if we wanted something more artistic. There could be a merging paving example. So what that would
merging paving.
what that would do is ideally, since the new building would be so new and modern.
Oh, I
and
see.
The existing
I got it.
building
Yeah,
would
yeah,
be
yeah.
brick.
Yeah.
We could do something in the paving to
Sure.
like make
Right.
that connection
Make the connection.
together.
And I like this the thing I like about the third option is I like the relocation of the entrance in. I think when you're thinking about wayfinding, to be able to drive in and see the entrance right in front of you makes a world of sense for people who have no idea where they're going.
Yes.
So.
On this option, the access back to the pool would just strictly be operations, maintenance, emergency services.
Yeah, I'm probably in favor of that. I mean. Yeah, think about that. That's hard.
Right, so option 1 and 2 have strictly pedestrian towards the
Right.
back, but it can be, the
Yeah.
vehicular can be added, like I said,
Yeah.
mixing and matching can happen between any of these options if there's something that is desired.
And what this doesn't show in the parking lot out in front of the existing recreation center, I think that first bay of parking facing the existing building and the studio rink there, that we may want to provide, I would recommend we provide more than what the code minimum is
Absolutely.
for
Great idea.
accessible
Sure.
parking
Yeah.
spaces there, that we provide
Yeah.
a preponderance there, so that way, you have access, you can park there, come in the building, take the elevator up, and you come back out. So gives
You
you
need to think
options.
about this bathroom down here. This is not ADA accessible either, right? I don't think it is. I'm pretty
Disputing,
sure.
I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not, but I'd have to look at it again too, but that. probably not.
And as these options are evolving, we've actually talked about putting the parking lot or putting the play area on the backside, flip-flopping and parking with the
Yes.
play area.
Yeah,
So that we have it near the outdoor.
near to the
restaurant.
bathroom and you don't have to cross the
Right.
parking lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that, you'll see that in our next iteration of the overall park.
Yeah.
plan. So,
Really fixing the bathroom.
yes. So,
Steve's ready to kill me, but.
No, let it
It's
out.
bad. It's bad. If you've ever had to use it, it's.
Yep.
Thank you for your time, commissioners. We don't really, I know in the interest of time, we have another presentation from Gateway. Don't need any feedback on this tonight, but if you have thoughts, things you like, things you don't like, just let us know as we kind of continue to work through these things. And we'll be back at a future meeting with some summaries overall on some things at the park. I know the Pashic folks and the Draw folks have taken into account the feedback that we've already gotten from the previous presentation and made tweaks based on that already. So there will be more to come on this, and thank you for the direction tonight on how to approach the grant application.
Thank you for the hard work. It's
Yeah, for the
great.
next presentation, we'll have numbers too. So, I mean, we should look at this as a total project, right?
Right, yeah. No, we have more perks stuff to look at probably. Yeah,
yes,
nice job. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's much more fun. It's free.
I understand.
Say, Mr. Simple. Ta-da. Oh, where is he? And next, we have the fascinating, ever wonderful idea of roads.
All right, good evening. Tonight we're here, Rudy, myself, and Dan are here to review the proposed 2024 road program. I trust that everyone's received the recommendation report that we sent out last week. So with that, obviously, the road program each year is one of the larger expenditures for the municipality in both reconstruction, mill and overlay, as well as all the other maintenance programs that are involved. So that being said, we thought it was worthwhile to go through these and make sure everyone's questions are addressed and to run through the program kind of step by step. So with that, each year, the program more or less starts with our Street Saver software, where we have an inventory of all of the roads within the municipality. As you can see from the screen there, it's broken, the 88 miles of roadway are broken into about 1,700 segments. So as we say each year, to look at all 1,700 segments on a year by year basis would not be efficient. So this program breaks it down such that we can run different budget analyses and determine which, we usually look at the first 2 or 3 years that are up for consideration. And those are the segments we review on an annual basis. For instance, this past year, we reviewed about 146 segments for consideration of the 1773. So that's more or less about 8% of the overall network is what we looked at to develop this year's program that's outlined there before you. Some of the statistics, and if anyone has questions along the way.
Question. You mentioned this year, maybe this year's PCI is 78. What was it last year?
It's on that, last year it was also 78. On that upper left-hand graph, it's a little hard to see, but this is just a screen capture. It was the
Looks like it was fairly level for.
yes, and 2019 was 74, 2020 was 74, 21 was 79, 22, 79, 23, 78, and this year 78. And I'll get into a little bit more on that here as we progress, but
I will also provide Matt's PowerPoint presentation to the commission. We didn't have that until a little earlier today, so we were still finalizing it. So
Yeah, that's
we'll make sure
fine.
that you get it.
Thanks.
So with that, as we highlight here, the current PCI is 78. The streets that are being considered for reconstruction in the base bid average about 53.8. The ones in the alternate bid are about 50. The ones in the street maintenance program in the base bid are 64, and the alternate bid are about 57. So what you can see there is the reconstruction streets are in like that 50 range. Mill and overlay streets are in that 60-ish range on an average basis. And then also, I thought it worthwhile to note on the right-hand side that over the course of the last 5 years, we've had about 13 miles of road work done by utility companies in the form of mill and overlay.
Yeah.
So that 13 miles really equates to 15% of the system that's been done by utility companies. So that is part of the reason for that bump that we saw, Commissioner Silverman, where we saw it bump up over that 2020 and so on period, is because there has been a lot of, I don't want to say free work, but there's been a good contribution there. And then conversely, our program, the mill and overlay and the reconstruction on a yearly basis, really looks at about 2.5% of the system. So each year we're addressing about 2.5% of it. So getting into the actual road reconstruction program, each year, like I said, it starts with the Street Saver, but it's not just with a blind eye on that program. We do take into consideration a number of other factors, as outlined on the screen there. One, flooding issues, icing issues, discussion with Public Works on problem areas that they do a lot of maintenance. Utility coordination, there'll be a few of those that we highlight here today. Continuation of previous programs, because a lot of times, going into that last bullet point, the length of street, a lot of times we don't want to inconvenience a particular, we've kind of found that that sweet spot or the maximum is about 1,000 feet that we want to reconstruct. Beyond that, the inconvenience to the residents and walking to their homes and things like that just is a little bit too cumbersome. So sometimes we do a smaller piece in year one and then with the intent of doing the next piece in year two, just so that we don't have that greater than 1,000 feet. So moving forward, this year's program, we're looking at about 0.79 miles in the base bid, 0.33 miles in the alternate bid. The streets above the line, so to speak, there's 7 of them in the base bid. They're in your packet as was provided. There's 5 alternate bids being recommended. A couple items of note are 2 of the roadways, and we'll touch on those here in a second, but Mapleton and Oregon Trail, there's funding that's going to be provided by utility companies to help offset the cost of those streets. That was planned with the utility companies when they were doing their work. And then also there are a number of streets that we look at as continuations. So getting into the individual streets, Birch Avenue, once again, stop me if I'm going too fast as we go. Birch Avenue, really from Scott to Sunset. This was a street that had a significant icing issue about a year ago, right, Rudy, where the main issue of the icing has been corrected through some stormwater work, but we are looking to continue that repair further up the street just to make sure that it doesn't propagate further on the roadway. That being said, this would be obviously, I think the length on this street was about 419 feet. And then I guess I forgot to mention the base bid streets for this year total about 4,064 feet, whereas last year's base bid streets totaled 4,055. So it's nearly identical to the length of road that we did in last year's program.
That's a pretty steep street for ice.
It is, yeah. Well, it was pretty much isolated to the bottom. There was spring water coming out on the left-hand side. We just extended a storm drain there.
But we're looking to, there's other roof drains further up that roadway that we're looking to collect. So that way it doesn't become an issue. Because oftentimes what happens is when houses transfer over at the point of sale, there may have been maybe a water issue in a basement or something like that people just dealt with. But then when the new owners come in, they put in a sump pump, they pump it out to the street, and now we have an icing issue.
And once we install the pipe, we can force them to connect to that pipe, because we'll put
Yeah, I was
points of
gonna say,
connection
yeah,
at
you
each
can't
property.
put it out
Right.
onto the street.
Yeah, you can, but it causes a problem. So this would eliminate that issue.
Do we need
Moving
to
forward.
change something in our code so people can't?
We have the ability to
We
do
actually
that.
do have
Yeah.
an ordinance.
We can enforce that, yeah.
All right, just want to make sure, because
Yeah.
that seems kind of.
We have the ability to do that.
The next street, Fernwood Avenue, from Parkside to the dead end. Once again, this is just I don't necessarily need to go into the detail on each street, but it's warranted. And once again, a lot of these streets, as you look on the recommendation report, the ones that are italicized also are ones that were recommended. They came up in the program and they were also recommended by Public Works from their maintenance efforts as well.
Sure.
Furwood Drive, this is one that's a continuation of a previous program. We had worked on Furwood in 2020 and stopped at house number 1145. This would be continuing from that house to Larchdale, just to complete that length of Furwood all the way from Larchdale down.
I've received calls from the residents along this section too for the last couple of years, so.
Because you forgot them.
uh,
But that's the
Never
way they
forgot.
feel.
Never forgot.
And then will you eventually do the Furwood out to Bower Hill?
That section is not in very bad. I think we actually reconstructed that. We'll probably resurface that at some point in
Just
time.
curious, I don't really drive it, so I don't. know.
Yeah, it's in good shape.
The next street for consideration is Mapleton. This is one where there's a contribution from People's Gas in the line of 150,000 that would be supporting this project. So this is when we had worked during the street opening permit, correct? Rudy and I had talked to them, Rudy talked to them, but I worked up some numbers as far as
Good.
what that contribution would be, so there'd be an offset.
Play games with us.
It makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, it's
This
a
makes
concrete
sense,
street, we're gonna
absolutely.
replace it as asphalt.
It would be
versus
replaced as
having to
asphalt.
Put it,
Yeah, concrete,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, got it.
and we do it at a discount since there's participation,
Yeah.
so pre-negotiated.
Smart.
Meridian, the length of that from Haverhill to Country Club.
This is Mr. Grella Street Meridian.
It is.
Uh-huh.
Oregon Trail, also another concrete street. If you remember last year, we did Wells Drive.
Yeah.
Which this
This has
touches.
the sewer thing running down.
Yeah,
it
this
still,
is
yeah.
the same sort of situation. This is Columbia Gas instead of Peoples. And there would be a contribution. We've estimated about 80,000 for that contribution as well. So that is in addition to our budget that those monies
Mhm.
would be applied. And it would be a continuation of what we did last year adjacent to the Wells Road. Raleigh, really from Furwood to Lakemont. And that really ends the base bid streets. That would account for that just over 4,000 feet. Base bid streets, the next streets would be alternates. Batten Way, it's an alley. We usually try to do, we've been picking off one alley more or less a year. For last year, we did Summit Way, if you remember, off of Cedar Boulevard. So we've been trying Midway Way. We've done a number of alleys over the years. We've been trying to upgrade them, try and get one here or there every year. So this would be a smaller one. We did just recently do Magnolia, which this ties into on the upper side. So this would kind of tie into that program.
It's a brick?
No,
No.
asphalt.
No, it's asphalt over
Save
concrete is
some
what,
of the brick.
it's asphalt over concrete is what the records say. Although from the records that we have, it shows that it was done in 1930 and nothing's been done with it really since. So that might be why it's in the condition that we see it.
I don't know. How does that happen?
Yeah.
For almost 100 years, that's actually pretty
Yeah.
good.
pretty
In
good.
great shape.
Yeah. Craig Court, this is one that, the commission saw as an alternate last year, so it was a brick street that was for consideration at that point, so it is kind of back, for consideration again this year as an alternate.
As long as we palletize the bricks and save them.
Yeah, and we've bid that as an item, it's just the storage, I guess is the,
I'm not sure how many will be salvaged from there because it's pretty bad.
It's
It's been
bad,
broken
I know.
up.
They are
We-
broken up.
Where you see that asphalt along the gutter line, we actually had to pull the bricks out because they were getting dangerous.
Yeah,
And we installed that by hand with our crews,
Yeah.
a couple years ago,
yeah,
so
I went up and looked at it.
pretty beat up, yeah.
It's bad. But any you can get help,
That which can be saved, please.
yeah. No, it's hard.
Pin Oak Drive, this would be between Sweet Gum and Moffett. We completed Sweet Gum in 2016. We've done some other, Flint Ridge and some other streets in Old Hickory in the area over the last few years. This is just continuing on in that, neighborhood. Parse Way, this would be picking up from Alfred to the parking garage. As you can see by the pictures, it's in pretty bad shape. The records here show 1985 was really the last time anything was done.
But it's an alternate, right?
It's an
I
alternate.
don't think this whole street was done in
It's-
1985. It was a section that we did over by the crossing
Yeah.
where the LRT site is, so
Right.
we didn't do this part here. This has
Okay.
been longer than
I was just thinking if when they do the second part of Vibrant Uptown, if they decide to do something with it.
I talked to Eric about that,
Okay.
and that's the thing, we're probably looking
Yeah.
at a joint project with, Port Authority, or
Yeah.
whatever it's called now,
would that go back, with PRT, would
Yeah.
that go back into concrete?
probably not, we use, asphalt pretty much for all
We
of
would
our.
plan on asphalt. I understand the one concern with all the dumpsters there,
Yeah,
as far as, I don't know if we would
Yes.
want to consider pads for the dumpsters, something along those lines. It would be,
Let's cross that bridge when we get
Yeah,
there, because
yeah.
there's some other ideas related to those
Right,
dumpsters as well,
so
so.
we want to incorporate that as well as anything that the business folks want to do up here at the same
Yeah,
time, so.
yeah. We're done with it.
This will at least give us a price.
Yeah.
We'll have it as an,
We'll have it as an
we'll have a
overlay.
number now, to work with moving forward,
Because I would imagine PRT would have some requirements in terms of weight of buses.
right?
Yeah, it would be built as like a collector road, like one of our,
12-inch profile.
yeah. Helen Drive, we've been working on Helen for a number of years and we have to do small pieces because there's so many intersecting streets with Helen. This one would really only be about 150 feet of street, just getting from Banksville up to halfway through the intersection with Dollar General because we couldn't go all the way through their driveway. So it would be one of those ones we would have to do a piece and then another piece. This would be just a 150-foot piece, just so that way we don't cut them off in the process.
Oh, yeah.
I assume, given, just between Banksville going up, you just have to do half the road and the other half the road. You can't block it off completely, can you?
They can get around the other
They
way.
can come out around.
Come out the other.
We would just have,
Morrison, on Morrison over
Yeah.
around, off
Okay.
of Foley and Morrison, yeah.
Tore up that way.
the only difficulty would be the notifications, that way folks going to
Yeah.
the business know to kind of
Right.
look around from a detour perspective.
Because there's one organization on the bottom left. Bought that, I think that, do they even have another way out of their driveway?
Well, we would split that, we would split that.
We would split.
We'd have them stop,
Access.
we'd stop halfway at the driveway, so they'd still
They can
always
still get
have
in and out of
access
their
in and out of their driveway. For the Dollar General, and I think there's some sort of.
Dollar General, at least the Dollar
access
General,
road
they can
thing.
go back down on the.
That little plaza, spots on the opposite.
Right.
And we've worked on Helen in 2020 and 2021, so this once again is that continuation type. So all told, with the streets that we have, the budget was the 2.2 million as adopted by the commission. There's a stormwater supplement, obviously any sort of stormwater improvements that we typically do on a year-to-year basis. That would be from the stormwater fund, and then as I mentioned, there'd be a utility contribution of approximately 230,000. So base bid option, we're about 2.243 million. Alternate bid has another 850,000. So it gives some latitude to pick and choose the streets once we get the bids in of how we want to move forward with that. And then one other item to note with the reconstruction program, last year, as I'm sure the commissioner remembers, we did add as a change order to the reconstruction, the Arden Road,
Yes.
traffic calming.
Yes.
So we intend to bid the Cedar in Salem, which I believe Mike Haberman has presented to the commission, last year. So we intend to incorporate the Cedar Salem realignment in the reconstruction
Right.
contract because it's all the same type of
Right.
bid items. It would be its own bid, so you would be able to see what that price is, or that price is independent of the other streets. And then I did throw a couple pictures on there on the screen of, the upper is the Arden Road where it hits Beverly before we did
Yes.
the realignment.
Yep.
And then the bottom is after the realignment. That's just a Google
Much
Earth
better.
image, so you can kind of see that.
What about scrub grass? Are we far enough along?
No.
on that? No? Yeah,
We're not yet. They're not even, they're only in phase one of the process.
okay.
So by including this in the bids, we'll not only have a price now, but I think we'll get a savings as doing it as an
Yeah.
independent project. So this makes sense.
So that ends what we would consider the reconstruction bid. At this point, we'd move into the maintenance. I guess, is there any questions on the reconstruction portion of what we had presented? So with that, the 2024 mill and overlay program, last year, last year we did about 1.36 miles of road. With the budget, the available budget of about 440,000. This year, it is less that's in the base bid at 1.4. The main reason for that is we have some bigger streets that we're proposing, wider, meaning that Cedar Boulevard is much wider than a normal residential street. So we're gonna not get as much length done with the same budget, just because Cedar Boulevard, a large portion of Cedar is being included.
This would be the time to narrow it
Yeah.
and slow the traffic.
Well, as part of what we're proposing for and you're aware of that,
Yeah,
for Cedar Salem.
Yeah.
We will neck that radius down as you come out of Holly
Yeah.
Crest and sort of move everybody over a little bit and narrow that a little.
I mean, you should see people tailgate me when I go down that at 25 miles further.
It's always like, it's block crosswalk idea.
I know. Raise those crosswalks.
So with the mill and overlay program, we have 6 streets shown in the base bid and then another 7 streets shown as alternate bids. That way we can mix and match streets. As just a number to have in your head, reconstruction on a linear foot basis is usually in that like $400 a linear foot for reconstruction costs, whereas the mill and overlay is more in that $60 a linear foot. So you do get for 15% of the cost. Once we get the streets to that reconstructed state, moving forward, you're really it's a 15% cost moving forward for the maintenance of. So with that, Cedar Boulevard, we kind of talked about already. It would be picking up from where the utility company had stopped their work at Mayfair. So this would be continuing that paving forward up to Morgan, so that would create a nice transition from where they stopped to getting up to Morgan Drive.
We just found out that they're gonna replace the water line on that lower section too, down near Public Works, so that'll get repaved as well. That's, they've had many breaks down there, as you're aware, that section from Painter's Run or Gilkison up to, basically up to, Lennondale.
Right in front of the range. See,
Yeah.
like, that's what it brings.
And if last year, we had originally planned to include that in our program, but then right before we came to this meeting last year, they had alerted Rudy to doing that work, so that's why we held it off last year. It's the last minute thing. And then the upper part of Cedar, this is Baywood to Washington. This is the last piece of the upper section of Cedar. Everything else has been done from Cochrane except for this piece. So this would finish off that, as well as the little piece of Florida that ties into that. There's about a couple 100-foot section there.
Yep.
And that would finish off. So that whole area would be done from Cedar all the way up to Washington and Florida, because we've already reconstructed that all the way back to Lebanon. So that would finish both of those off. Illinois and Mississippi, those are both kind of together. They neither have been, had work done on either of those since about 98 is what I have as record. So we're proposing to do mill and overlay from both of those, from the municipal line on Mississippi to the end, and then Illinois from the end of Mississippi. They kind of go hand in hand together.
I've received calls from several of these residents over there too, over the last few years too, so.
Right. And North Meadowcroft, if you recall, we did a section of North, we're trying, it seems as this cycle comes around, we had about 20 years ago, more or less, we had paved Beverly, North Meadowcroft, Cedar, and now they're all kind of coming back around 20 years later. So that's where we're at. In fact, North Meadowcroft was exactly 20 years ago that we did this section. Bower Alley is an alternate. This was on the bid last year as an alternate. It's a concrete street. We would propose, we really can't shut it down with the apartment buildings there.
Yeah.
So what we would propose is similar to what we did at Elleton, where we would mill, do like tape across the joints and then pave over top of them.
We did the same thing back here too, at the
Yeah,
municipal
that's
building,
right.
municipal way,
On the
the
hillside.
rear entrance, yeah.
Exactly. Catalpa, this was an alternate also last year, so we have that back in. Magnolia Place is the same. Unfortunately, last year, the way the pricing came in, we weren't really able to exercise any of the alternates. So a lot of the alternates that you saw last year were kind of back in this year. And the only reason that we didn't move some of them into the base bid was the fact with Cedar Boulevard being a more heavily trafficked and more of a thoroughfare, and we can't let that degrade too far. We wanted to move that ahead of some of these others.
I think last year we pulled Crystal and Craig Court out of the base
Yeah.
bid because they were brick and we hadn't finalized the Brick Street policy and moved a couple other ones in.
Correct, yes, yes.
You would note at the bottom, your estimated cost of these to be 425,000. There's, round numbers, 434,000 in the budget, so it doesn't seem terribly likely that any of these alternates we've.
Yeah, so I guess if I just fast forward here a little bit, so Oxford, that alternate Shady, we have by the public safety building on that bend, there's a lot of pushing and
Right.
rutting
Yeah.
in the paving there and
The rest
patches
of
and whatnot.
Yeah, the
So-
rest of that was paid by the water company last year
Oh,
to, from that point down, so we're just gonna finish that little piece off up the Washington Road,
And Oxford was done 2 years ago, and that was
the lower section.
The lower section, yeah.
very much appreciated.
St. Clair, so Valley Park, but getting to Commissioner Silverman's comment, so on the budget side, yes, the budget is 433,770. Our base bid is at 425. We do have all these other alternates. The one thing I will say is that when I look at the asphalt index, and I'm not projecting the pricing to go down, last year's index was 594. This year's index, the same February of 2024, is 569. And that's an indicator of what that asphalt price is gonna be.
Yeah.
So it has gone down 4%. I'm not predicting it going down 4%, but I'm hoping that maybe there's.
Other variables are always labor costs and fuel
And
costs.
oil, yeah.
Understood, yeah.
So
So,
in a sense, as you start looking at the list of saying, only let's say 2 can be done, which would those 2 streets be? On the alternate list.
I think that's why we gave 7 alternates there, because they're all different values. If you look on the screen there, as far as what I anticipate the cost of them being. So we do have a wide variety of choices. If we have 30,000 of available, if we're under bid by, or under budget by 30,000, we have a couple choices to choose from. And then I think that that would ultimately give the commission more optionality at that time. Okay. That's the intent.
Let's see what the bids come in. Go for it.
Yeah. Right.
And then lastly, I wanted to touch on the Brick Street Maintenance Program. I know that there was, we took bids on that program a week or so ago. Public Works, and I have a list here on the screen.
Yeah.
Public Works has, I italicized the category 1 and category 2 streets. Those are the streets that were, in that, PennDOT review a number of years ago, Castle Shannon Boulevard. So the ones that are italicized are those that are 1 and 2. And then, but all of these streets that are listed here are streets that Public Works has inventoried and has some level of repair that needs done on each of these. So these are all streets that are considered for repair. That being said, the budget is about 93,000. Our low bidder was 98. We would just adjust the quantities to stay within budget. So there's about 940 square yards of defects on Public Works' list. And given the bid that we received and using that pricing, we're anticipating we could do maybe about 550
It's not bad.
of that list. Now
Pretty
that,
good.
sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay. I looked like you were gonna say something.
Well, I was gonna ask you a question. So under the Brick Street Repair Program, that's compared to the Brick Street only, it's nothing to do with curbing, is that correct?
Right.
That's correct.
And it's, we have units in there we have, units in the bid into the specifications for base repair if it's necessary, but we typically don't run into that.
Right.
So mostly just resetting brick and rebedding them for the most part.
Remind me where the 93 came from for that budget.
That was our estimated, unit cost times the quantity. We gave a couple different options at budget time last fall, and this is the level that the commission decided to fund. We had expanded levels within the street maintenance.
I think
Right.
your base level was 635.
We've been, base level was about 55, 65 over the last several years, and then the commission decided to put additional money towards the brick. Last year, we spent about $190,000 on brick street maintenance, so we did a lot of catch up last year, so.
As we got to the end of the budget workshop process, and we were going through monies that we had.
So that 98 you're saying is low bidder, we would adjust down to stay within budget, so the 940 that was on that previous slide of square yards on those different streets, the 98 would cover like maybe 60% of that? 500 and something? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not is that a complete list of brick streets that needs work?
So what we do is we send our employees out, we designate areas, we go by address, we measure a length and width, so we have a surface area, square yards, square feet. We record all that data and then we work off of that. We prioritize the areas that have been registered as category 1 and 2 on the PennDOT report. If we have areas that you know, need some work, but they're 3s or possibly even 4s, but they're dangerous, we'll hit those areas too. So it's all just kind of,
Do you know
Based
offhand
on-
how much we have? So we've got what was that, 940?
940 is what we marked this year.
And then what's in not category 1 and 2, but needs work?
I didn't break it down that far. I mean, we could look. I mean, the 940 is total. That's the list that our folks went out and looked at.
That's 1 through 4. 1
Yeah,
through 4. is
All 4
9.
categories, right?
And I throw out an idea, and I'm looking at your memo, and I don't know if you're gonna talk about this evening or not, where, for instance, the crack ceiling program came in under bid or under budget. The budget amount was 26,000, amount of the bid 17,800. Could we, or how would we achieve that to say, take the savings from that program and then cover that $5,500 difference
For brick
streets?
streets.
That would go all to the maximum amount of that low bidder, 98,775, using the savings. We're getting at the end of budget, we're getting on the crack ceiling program. Can we do it? How we do it?
Or to Andrew, yes, you can. The process, do we even need to go through a budget amendment? Because the funds are there. It's just shifting them from one.
Okay.
Say that again, Stephen.
Basically, the idea is that
Yeah.
if you look at this memo, the crack ceiling program, the budget amount was round numbers 26,000. The bid came in 18,000, including 8,000, below. Well, we're over here by 5,500. Well, 8,000 of the good here, 5,500 of the bad there. They offset each other. We could get a bit more brick maintenance program done. Up to the 98,775 and still stay within what we had budgeted, for 2024.
You may want to wait until you get the bids back for all of these
Make sure.
to see
It's not over.
see where we are in
Yeah,
terms of
makes
total
sense.
number. But then let's say that there was an ad alternate street that you thought you would really like to do that. You may want to prioritize that over some additional brick. I mean,
Makes sense.
again, just so
So
you
we'll
have
just look at it when.
all of the information in front of you.
That's fine.
The other thing is too, there's an estimate for a minimum amount of quantities for base repair, which is more expensive than just resetting the brick. So
Right.
if we don't do that, there may be savings within the contract itself to be able to cover the surface area without the base needing repaired, if that makes sense to you.
Can't tell the base until you dig up the
Right.
street.
And I think maybe what I can do too, if
Mm.
we can see where we're at budget time, and I can let the commission know what we've spent so far and what we've covered and corrected. And then we can estimate off of that for next year's program, because I just threw like alternate or numbers out for additional expanded levels for
Yeah.
the street programs.
What do you even?
So I can give you hard numbers next year, or this year for next year's budget, for 25's budget.
That'd be helpful. I was just suggesting course correction in mid-program, as Keith said. Let's see as things start to come back with bids, and even that's kind of one touch point. Another is a little further, once we're doing it and go, because we've had it go both ways.
Mhm.
All of a sudden,
Right.
we can't do an alternate because another street went bad, or things are going well and we can scoop up another street. So just keep us.
Remember, we'll award that contract for the 98,775. We'll control quantity. So if we see that we still have dollars available to us, we can always work to that number.
Yeah.
But to your point, when we did Florida, one section of Florida a couple of years ago, we ran into more base repair than we had anticipated. So that reduced our capacity on some of the other ones.
Are you sealing the joints in the brick between each brick when you do it? I'm just curious.
They're grounded, they're not
That's the word
sealed,
I'm
yeah.
looking for,
Yeah.
not sealed,
Yeah, they're
sorry,
grounded.
grouted. Yeah.
Yes.
And we did update the specification. So when the whole Brick Street policy was
Yeah.
taking place,
Yeah.
we had met with Belden Brick and we had met with some of the other brick companies.
Mhm.
And we sent them our spec and they more or less said it was good, but they did have some suggestions for some
Yeah.
tweaks to that
Yeah,
spec. So
just
we did
curious.
incorporate the tweaks from those meetings with.
I don't know if you guys have these numbers or if Andrew or Ian have them, but so the 98,775 and 550 works out to about $180 a square yard. I'm wondering how that compares. When we did the Brick Street analysis, we were working off of like conversations, but not real bids. So I'm curious how that 180 compares to what we were talking about when we were doing that brick analysis.
So keep in mind, this maintenance is just taking the brick out, redoing the bedding and putting the brick back.
It's not replacing.
It's not replacing the concrete. It's not replacing the
Base.
concrete
Super
and the,
basic maintenance.
yeah, so it's just so it
It's not apples. to apples.
it
I
doesn't
get
compare.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
What I do remember from that analysis, when we did bid Parkway, for instance, we bid Parkway as a brick street, and we bid Parkway as a reconstructed street. I think it was an asphalt street in 2018 or 2019. And when we got those bids, it was about a 2.9 times difference, I believe. I thought it was almost.
Yeah.
You know, once you blow away the history, can't get it back.
So
Could, it just costs.
Costs more, right? Yeah. Poor Rudy.
So we wanted to bring the proposed program to you. I'll get you the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
And ultimately, what we're looking at doing is going to bid if the commission so authorizes, moving forward to bidding. We would look to be in the paper later this week, take bids on, I think it was in the memo there, take bids on the 19th of March, review with the commission on the 26th, but make a motion on the 9th of April. So there'd be.
You're okay with it? Are you okay with it? Okay, I'm okay with it too.
Yeah.
Andrew or Jeff? Sorry, they didn't find.
Yes. Yes, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
The last piece of information in your packets, just to refresh your memory, a number of years ago, the commission asked us to improve our communication to
Yes,
residents related
I
to
saw
this.
these.
We've done that,
Yeah.
just as a refresher for what goes out.
Yeah.
Rudy worked with Laura. So I think we have improved the communication.
I thought so too. I thought these were good. I mean, some people won't open the letters and they still complain, but, tough.
We've got web, letter, and text.
Yeah, I mean, really, not much more we can do. You ignore all those at your own peril.
Find out when the street gets closed.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the contractor also sends them a notice. It's just approximate one morning.
Yeah, perfect. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, John.
Okay, boards and authorities. Does anybody have some reports? Ooh, Steve Reddy's ready to jump on it.
Yeah, I feel like, listen.
Ready.
I got my card. The volunteer appreciation dinner coming up Wednesday, March 27th.
Yeah.
It cocktails at 6, dinner at 6:45, so we are honoring all our volunteers that serve on our boards. And I have no idea what the RSVPs are so far, but I certainly hope as many of our board members can attend as possible. You and I have a conflict for 7 PM that night. But we could be there for first part, and then we're otherwise spoken for later. Which I have to tell staff about. Okay.
And still make it to go back. You can take your dinner with you.
So anyway, that's why I wanted to make sure that was everybody knew about
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think did we set the thing for sports? So March 11th?
March 11th,
Oh, good.
Amanda Ross
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be
yeah,
making
yeah.
a presentation on field utilization.
Oh,
Yeah, so for the vast viewing audience that is undoubtedly watching this discussion session right now, if you want to learn more about fields and a report that was done by our sports board related to field usage around the municipality, they have done a fantastic report with some information that recommends a few different things. And they'll be presenting that on, it sounds like March 11th. So come and check that out. It will be a very interesting report.
Great.
Right.
Okay,
Forward to.
library board, everything's doing very well at the library. Best news is the elevator is back working. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. But they're stable. What they're looking for are gardens for their garden tour. So if anybody has a garden, it can be small. But it has to beat my back hill, which is just weeds. So if anybody has anything, please volunteer it. MRTSA, under Steve's wonderful guidance, has extended a employment opportunity to an executive director. So tomorrow night, we'll find out if that works out.
Vote on that tomorrow night.
Vote on it tomorrow night, but we had an executive session and everybody, executive sessions for it, so we anticipate it will go through. Okay. Yeah.
The other thing you'll see on March 11th is a presentation by the library for an idea in keeping with their strategic plan for potentially a capital project that they'd like to get commission input on and potentially try to move forward.
Right, forgot to say that, sorry.
Thank you.
Great. I'm done.
Other room at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, other room at 8 o'clock. Be there, be square.